When David explodes onto the scene, he's just an ordinary guy doing an ordinary, unspectacular job out of the limelight. Sure, something amazing had happened to him in the past, where God had turned up and called him and told him he was going to use him, but then things had gone quiet again. And now here's David in the middle of nowhere, doing a boring job, looking after some sheep, kind of waiting for God to fulfill that promise. And that promise involved using David to lead God's people. And by leading God's people in a particular way, they were going to be blessed and God was going to be glorified. But now there's something standing in the way, and it's big and it's ugly and it seems to be pretty powerful, and it kind of seems to think it's in control. And even God's people are convinced that their demise is inevitable, and the best they can do is sort of keep their heads down and hope this thing goes away, or perhaps find a way of making peace with it. And it's no different today, is it really? The world seems to be serving up loads of challenges that present themselves as bigger and stronger than God's plan and God's people. And it's easy to be paralyzed by the size of these things and the apparent facts. Think about all the voices we can end up listening to, the enemy mocking and taunting us, or even family members discouraging us. Eliab, David's oldest brother, when David turned up to see what was going on, he got really annoyed with him. David, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be looking after the sheep. You're skiving. You just come to watch the fight. King Saul, when David said, I would go out and fight him, King Saul said to him, don't be stupid, David. You're just a boy and he's a warrior. Don't be ridiculous. Look at him. He's a giant. The truth is that Goliath was so hopelessly outnumbered that he didn't stand a chance. And that's because 1 plus God is always a majority. Had Goliath really seen what was going on, I reckon the hair on the back of his neck would have stood up, his mouth would have gone dry, his knees would have started to buckle under the weight of all that armor, and I reckon he probably would have wet himself. Faced with these big challenges, we tend to think if only God would do something, perhaps he could send one of the great evangelists, or make me into a great evangelist, you know, someone like Billy Graham or John Wesley or Jackie Pullinger. Hey, you know, guilty as charged, I've done it myself. But David's confidence was in things that God had already said, and the things that God had already done, the lions and the bears experience, and the things that God had already given David. Yeah, David was a really, really good shot. Listen, God has already said some things to you. Think about, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Think about, I have called you by name, you are mine. Think about, all power in heaven and earth is given unto me, therefore go and make disciples. Many other, I hear them all the time, many other very specific prophecies and words about what God has said to us. And God has already done some things in you. Think about all the experiences that you've already been through. Think about all the ways that He's blessed you and brought you through. And when you're tempted to look at that person and think, well, there's no chance of them becoming a Christian, just remember this: He called you, and God has already given some things to you. So what have you got? A few loaves, a few fish, as we've already heard, you know, a few smooth stones. It may not seem much, but that's the point. God can take these few things, you know, our gifts, our experiences, our talents, our faith, small as it is, even the little bits of money or property or possessions that we offer up to God and we put them in His hands. And do you know, if we're courageous and we're prepared to step forward, God will take these things and throw them at the problem, and we'll be really surprised how accurate the Holy Spirit can be.